to that?
Where do I get a nuke? That's my response. Like, it's over. Like, that's it. Imagine the secession that like was projected back in 2008 and 2012 when Obama won because we had a black president. Imagine that came true and like the South seceded again. Shit. You know what I mean? Let's say the Democrats like who live in Atlanta in Georgia like say, "No, we're not doing this." And they're surrounded by all that farmland and all those people. The government has nukes. The government has freaking drones,
Tanks,
tanks,
drones,
AR-15s.
helicopters.
And the great thing is too, like working in the federal government, a lot of people that I work with are ex-military. And if you work with anyone who's ever been in the military, you'll know that they talk about themselves and the fact that they were in the military a lot. And with that, you listen and you understand that there's so many things that we don't even know that exist, that the military knows exist, that we don't know exist. So how are you going to defeat the military? Okay, cool.
So,
AR-15s, imagine they have AR-22s. Like, come on. Like, there's no logical way, the way it's set up, for this to be even rationale anymore,
so would you argue that the amendment is outdated?
100%. 100%. It was created back when we had muskets. I could be
Right,
standing
yeah.
2 feet away from you and miss.
So, so what would be, so, because, you know, in order to get people to back something like that would be gun control,
Mm-hmm.
what would you propose as an argument for them to want gun control?
I think the argument has to come from a place of listening, right? Because then it's the same arguments. The same arguments that happened back with Columbine are the same arguments that were happening with Sandy Hook, are the same arguments that are happening in Atlanta, the same arguments that are happening in Orange County, right, in California, that happened like a day ago, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like I planned on doing this topic, and I texted you like since the last live, and like, oh, I'm gonna talk about gun control next, or guns and stuff in general. And between that time and now, we had 3 other mass shootings. Boulder, Colorado. Like, there's been 4 mass shootings in like a week, in like less than 2 weeks or something. Like, this is a continual thing. So for me, and one thing I've never seen from the NRA, from these places that say protect your neighborhoods, protect who you are, protect all this other stuff, I've never seen them go into the South Bronx and teach and advocate the people who are living in those buildings to have guns, right? So they can protect their home, so they can protect their community. I've never seen that argument. I've never seen that take place. What I have seen is the Black Panthers with AK-47s walk on the steps of the Capitol building in California. And then I saw California pass a lot of gun control laws. That I've seen. But I've never seen an NRA representative in the Bronx. I've never seen them in Yonkers. I've never seen them in these heavily populated cities or these places with high crime rates and stuff like that, advocating for people to protect their homes. Compton. I think Dave Chappelle, and I reference a lot of comedians, because they have some good points. When
They do.
Yeah, he had this idea of Compton, like, oh, it's dangerous, oh, it's this. And it's like, they got lawns? You know what I mean? Where's the NRA of Compton? So everyone could be armed and protect their neighborhood, to protect their home. Doesn't happen. Now, why is that? It's a topic for another day. But again, it becomes nonsensical. It becomes, in all essence, bullshit. Your argument of protection is invalidated with the fact that it's not protecting anyone. Who is it protecting? Right? And even so, like, for me, I've personally never fired a gun. I've held a gun. I've had a gun pressed against my chest. That was terrifying. I've even pulled the trigger. And again, empty gun. I held in my hands how heavy those things are. And in that process, you think about the rationale to do something like that. It's not an easy one. It's not. Um, then you also have the concept of gun safety, and I'm thankful for some of the people in my life who, in those situations where I had held guns, went over gun safety with me. When you pass a gun, you never point at anybody. You check it to make sure it's not locked. You make sure it's on safety, then you pass it over. And then when you receive it from someone, you check it again because it could have been a mistake. And it's a whole system of safety. And even so, like a magazine, it's not easy loading a magazine. Like it's easy at first, like bullet one, bullet two, bullet three, and then bullet four. That spring is more tensioned. To make it fully loaded, not even fully load the gun, fully load the clip, I bruised my fingers. Like it's not an easy easy thing.
Right.
Which is why in police academies and in the military, it becomes so rigorously trained into you because you have to get it right. And even in that process, you could jam it, right? And if you're in battle or in a situation where you're using it and it's jammed, basically useless. Can't use it, you know? So, and even in all that accounted for in the concept of just proper gun safety with you having it, who's really doing all that? Oh, but I am. Okay, you're talking about masses of people. And then I think when the thing I got into Facebook the other day, dude pointed out like there's like 10 million Americans who own AR-15s. Okay, so 10 million people should decide over 320 million people?
Yeah.
I don't think so. That's not democracy. That's the 1% like making decisions for both of us. That's not fair. That's not what this is. And then using their own arguments, oh, if you don't like it, you can leave, right? Because we're like the only country in the world who even has a First Amendment or the Second Amendment in the concept of right to bear arms, And the NRA has already been proven and being sued by New York State that they're corrupt, that they're invalid, they're not a non-profit organization to those concepts. And they've even gone off to freaking Australia and advocated for people's right to bear arms, and that doesn't exist over there. That's not a law. So you see it become more of a capitalistic ideal, and they sell fear. They sell weapons. They sell bullets, right? I remember, I think it was Chris Rock or somebody else said, make a bullet $1,000 a bullet. You'll stop gun violence there. Like, it's done.
$1,000 a bullet.
Like, that's a college fund right there. You know what I mean?
So
why is it more expensive
glad,
to go to school than to buy a gun, to buy bullets? Come on.
So I'm glad that you brought up Australia because I actually did some research into other countries and their gun control laws.
Mm-hmm.
I just want your perspective on it. So I researched the UK, Japan, and Australia to see what they have because they're one of three of the lowest rates of gun violence. And it's not that they haven't had it in the past. They have quite a bit for Japan and also Australia. But here's what happened after some things. So in the UK, there's this place called Dunblane, and there's a massacre of 16 5 and 6 year olds in a school, and the teacher who tried to protect them. The same year, that was in 1996. The same year in the United States, classroom shootings had occurred in Nashville, San Diego, South Carolina, among other places. So here's what they did after that happened. They banned cartridge handguns. So you can no longer have a handgun that has a cartridge, like Glocks, handguns like that. The amount of homicides was at 25,000 that year, and it steadily decreased until it was 5,000 in 2015. Steadily decreased every year. Now, that's what happened with handguns. 9 years before that, there was another shooting. This was in Hungerford. A man used a semi-automatic rifle, 2 of them, and a handgun that were registered to him to kill 16 people in a series of random shootings. And right after that, they made a law that banned the ownership of semi-automatic weapons and made it a law that you had to register shotguns and also handguns. What do you think about, in that example that I just gave, why why have other countries been so quick while we have been so lethargic?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the way we have designed it ourselves, right? We designed the First Amendment for free speech, free press, free this, free that, free all those basic freedoms. Second Amendment, right to bear arms. Our First Amendment was you can say whatever you want. Our Second Amendment is you have the right to defend yourself with lethal weapons. Put those two together, right?
Right.
Uh,
It's
and I
it's
think
quite the combination.
it's quite the combination. It's a one-two punch, right? Literally. And I said it in the last live, my teacher, may he rest in peace, Dr. Darm, he would say this all the time. You can do whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. So long as you're willing to accept the consequences, right?
Right.
So the First Amendment, you can say whatever you want. You can write whatever you want. Then you got to be willing to take the consequences. And back then, you had duels. So for you to be able to take those consequences, let's protect you and have you with the gun. We combine those and put those at the top of our priority list compared to other countries who haven't. And these other countries have been around for longer than the United States. And some of them haven't, right? Like Australia is one that's very new in that concept of a country, of a commonwealth, or even a free state in its own right. Yet, unlike the United States, you have this concept of unification because we are the United States. We have 50 different states now. So we're 50 countries and we all have our own opinions. And even within those countries, like call them states, you have different cities. And then within those cities, you have different communities. So we have this plethora of different ideals. So we can't really unify, which is why I know like even like Congress, like again, topic for another time. I know Congress needs to get updated, but I'm kind of okay with having senators and representatives because it makes sense, in that concept. We're not always going to get 100% agreement. So you have to ride with the majority. The big issue now is that the majority wants those changes. But because the way it's designed, the minority has a right to say what they want to say and hold on to that power. So the filibuster is going to hold back a lot of stuff right now, the way it's designed, or the way it was redesigned. I would love to imagine Mitch McConnell standing up there for as long as he could talk. That'd be hilarious. But nonetheless, you have this push against change, which again is the unknown, right? We said black people should be free. We had a whole civil war. And in reality, it's not over. That we now have a trial that's happening with George Floyd's murderer. And it's interesting because people keep calling it the George Floyd trial. He is dead.
Yeah, he's not on trial. He's not the one on trial.
Chauvin's trial, right? He's the one on trial. But then right there is an exact representation of how the media and everyone's ideals are perceived and percepted to change from the rationale of what should be happening to move this forward. We can't agree on anything. And the things we can agree on is the fact that we can disagree.
Yeah.
We have to be able to find a place where we can unify strongly and get these powerful entities out of the way, right? Like you have, I guess like a story, I guess, kind of relates to it. Like when you're a kid, you don't decide where you live. My mom, I was born in Manhattan and we, lived in the Bronx. I was raised there my entire life. When I was in third grade, we moved to Yonkers. Why? I don't know. I'm in third grade. I go to school on Thursday and my teachers are prepping because they're like, hey, we know you're going away because you moved. You'll be changing districts at some point. We'd love to throw you a party. We're also going to plan for you to take the ELA, so we're going to skip you up a grade, but the ELA is in February. We're prepping you for it. On that Friday, I woke up and went to school in Yonkers. My entire life just changed in a night. Why? This is my mother's decision. And after talking to her years later about it, you know how expensive it was to take me, a child, all the way to the Bronx, all the way to school, and then all the way back to Yonkers. Like it was not difficult. It was very difficult. We didn't have a car, so it was public
Right.
transportation. We know how that is in New York City. So it's the situation for everyone. Decisions made, right? That's leadership. It sucked for me, and I hated it so much. I'll never forget that. I was in third grade. It was a Friday. We have spelling tests every Friday. I got a 64. It was the first time I ever failed a class. Never forget that in my life. It's hard to laugh, right? But at the end of the day, look where it led me. It led me to work with groundwork. It led me to work with the National Park Service. It led me to this life that I now live. I didn't like it at first. I hated it and resented it, even for years at that point. But now I look back at it like, wow, what a good decision. That's leadership. Looking beyond yourself for even if someone's going to hate it for a while, they're going to get over it. They're going to grow from it. We can do that in this country if our leaders take action.
So,
Leaders, they're like little kids.
so yeah, I guess, you know, the thing is that there's going to be backlash, right? There's going to be backlash either way, whether we have stricter gun control or not. But if we don't, the other added side effect to that is possibly more mass shootings, possibly more gun violence, possibly more people getting killed, injured, whatever it might be. So I guess it's kind of like what which one do you choose? Do you choose to hold on to this right that is kind of outdated, um, in all honesty, by some people's perception of it and use of it, or for the greater good, do you sacrifice that right? Now, I think I think in the United States in particular, there's been that conversation for quite a while, right? We look at like not after in the wake of 9/11, airport security, something like that, something as simple as that, where you have to walk through a machine that actually scans your body, that gives you actually absolutely zero privacy, but is there and designed to benefit the greater good. Some
Yep.
people may not like it. Some people may choose to be patted down in another room. That's their choice. But these measures are in place to benefit the greater good and the vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you see? Here's the thing with like gun laws and gun control. What, who decides what guns are okay, and who decides, what exactly do you need to do in order to get a gun?
Yeah.
Who is the arbiter of that? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what if you were telling somebody that we needed gun control, I think they would throw that back at you. Who's to decide?
Yeah. I think that's well, my immediate smart aleck remark would be, um, it was written in 1780s. Everything that was made in the 1780s, you can use free range. Go ahead, But my honest response is the same thing. Like back to the insurance argument, right? And to me personally, I think this is the best argument out there in the concept of gun control, so we can get to a better place with it. My car is insured. I have insurance for the vehicle if anything happens to the vehicle. I have insurance for myself if anything happens to me as the driver. I have insurance, and that covers like me and anyone else in the car. I also have insurance against someone else who hits my car who doesn't have insurance. Because if they hit me, they have to pay for it. But if they don't have insurance, it ends up I got to pay for it, right? That's why you have the uninsured insurance. Same concept could be applied to guns. And I meant to research that earlier today, like which comedian was talking about this, because I loved it. And it made sense. You insure the gun to the owner. So now you own the gun, it's insured by you. If you use it to kill people, not only do you go to jail, time out. Who sold you the gun? Right? Like if I get into a car accident and I died, knock on wood, hopefully God forbid, um, they got to research the accident. What caused it? I can't answer it because I'm gone. There's no one else around, so they can't ask anybody what happened. There's no video cameras or anything like that. So they're going to do a whole survey and study of the car. Oh, this happened because this tire blew, but it wasn't because of the tire itself. It was because the way it was designed. Who designed this? Now you go to the manufacturer. Then you see how like it goes and goes and goes and holds people accountable all along the line. That to me is a more effective method, the way things are set up right now, right? That doesn't limit your ability to buy a gun because you can still buy one. It doesn't limit your ability to defend yourself, right? In that mythical invasion that's happening, right? You have now this ability, but you also have this liability. Because let's say someone takes your gun and uses it. That's why a lot of people have gun safes, and those things are heavy, you know. But that's why those things exist, to protect the weapon itself when it's within your security. And then you already have laws that say you have to keep it locked in a lockbox, right? You have these things already semi in place, but there's no liability against them, right? All we do is hold the gun owner accountable, right? And I think about like mass shootings like Columbine. I don't know, but when I was in high school, I didn't have enough money to buy lunch. I can't imagine myself having enough money to buy guns. So parents, they took your stuff and they used it and they killed people. Why aren't the parents of the kid in jail? Why aren't the people who sell the weapons? Why aren't they in jail? Right? You sold them something that was used, and at the end of the day, we have to understand these are killing machines. They're not designed to be nightstand. They're not designed for any. They're designed for one thing and one thing only: to kill. Whatever you point at it and you pull that trigger, that bullet is gonna pierce and kill whatever it hits. Right? That is a huge responsibility. That's a huge liability because things could be misfired. If you leave, let's say hypothetically, like this happened to me, just as an example. I worked in Wyoming. There's bears. I carry around bear spray.
Yeah.
I have to be very protective of my bear spray. I accidentally left it in my car in the summer. It gets hot. The can leaks. That aerosol of the bear spray gets out, and now it's in my car. I open the car. Shh. It hurt like hell. I'll never forget that in my life. Small little thing, and it was my fault. Little things happen. I carried around bear spray that entire year from I guess the entire summer, like since the bears are awake. Every single day. Drove around with it, had it in my car, always had it on my belt. I was always responsible with it. This one time, forgot it in the car. And now that bad thing happened. Thankfully, it only hurt me, right?
Right.
But it can happen. There's a lot of liability in that. And especially because I'm a federal employee. If it accidentally deployed and hit like a regular person, there's a huge thing that could happen to me. I get written up. I could have a whole court of appeals. There's other stuff happen. Like I could lose my job. Like all these other things. If it was discharged at my fault, or even not my fault, in my possession. There's all these things that hold me accountable to that bear spray. The gun, not so much, as a civilian. And then even in the concept of like training, like I was saying earlier, we have police and military who are trained nonstop and still kill people and still misuse it. And these are trained professionals, right? These are people we pay to ensure our safety. In essence, if you really think about it, the Second Amendment was written before police were a thing. Now we pay taxes to have police who carry these weapons. Doesn't that veto the Second Amendment? Because we're paying for our own protections,
Because, I mean, I guess they would technically be the militia that
The train
has
mode?
firearms, that is trained. Now,
Exactly.
but so this is why I researched the UK before I came on with you, because the UK, if you, as you might know, the police really do not have guns or carry
Hmm.
around guns, which is kind of an odd concept for people to understand. Is
In America.
that in America? Is that a concept? Is that something that you you would feel would be necessary in the future for the United States Police to consider?
Personally, um, I would prefer that. The reason is I work for the federal government and I'm 20 years old, I'm a grown man, and I work with law enforcement, right? Like sometimes hand in hand, sometimes just, they're in the office. Every single time, without fail. The second I see them, I look at them, I look at the gun. I look back at them, my hands are out and about. They're my coworkers. That's a reaction as a colored person in the United States that I have been grown with, that I have not been able to break. That is a fear of that weapon being used against me because I've seen it be used against Malcolm X, Martin Luther King
Right.
Jr., people who look like me or
Yep.
think like me have been Medgar Evers, right? These people who've been slain, Tupac, Biggie, you have these people who've been slain by that weapon who had a positive impact in your life, who you may even say are your heroes. And that's what did it. Now you're in a room with that weapon. It's triggering all these memories, all these thoughts, all these possibilities of what can cause that weapon to be used against me.
I would say that this is the exact opposite of what we were talking about before with the